Hi, gang. Let me get the opening. There's the notice. You'll probably want to read that. It's interesting. And there we are. Hi, I'm Roage. I kind of messed up here. I didn't know I had to push the button go live, and so yeah, I apologize. So I've been sitting here talking to myself the whole time, which is probably actually pretty good because it'll help me actually refine my message here. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Roage. Let's just say I've been a person of interest for about 25 years. I came up on the U.S. federal government's radar back in 1999. And so all of a sudden, I get a visit from the Secret Service, and wow, that caused me to actually learn the law, and everything changed from that. And so for 15 years, I've been, let's just say, a transfigured human being with a completely different way of looking at everything. And so I've been attempting to show people this stuff for a long time. Now, if you have trouble with some of the stuff that I say here, I would suggest that you go into the description of this video. There is a link to the cheat sheet Mark V. If you read that out loud to yourself, you will understand a little bit more about what I'm talking about here. And so, because it's actually pretty important that you understand that. What most people don't realize is they carry around a lot of subconscious conditioning, and that subconscious conditioning interferes with their ability to actually onboard data that could actually benefit them in a profoundly powerful way. Not only are they conditioned to avoid that information, they're actually carrying around hardening that keeps it, that makes it difficult to actually break the conditioning. Okay, so the mechanism of the cheat sheet is a way, if you read it out loud to yourself, to actually usurp some of that conditioning, so where you can actually hear things that, quite frankly, you've never heard in your life. And I certainly don't hear a lot of people out there saying the sorts of things that I say out here. And of course, until you actually read the cheat sheet Mark V, then a lot of what I say is probably going to sound either crazy, or you can't understand it, or it'll sound confusing. But if that's you, just go ahead and read the cheat sheet Mark V out loud yourself. I guarantee, even if you don't believe anything that's in there, it will help you understand a little bit about what's going on. It looks like I got David Andrew on here. I got GameCuber. Probably a fetch glitch. No, it wasn't a fetch glitch. It was just me, stupid. I didn't actually start the broadcast. But, oh, GameCuber, thank you. Oh, yeah, and I do want to say, for all you folks that actually gave me birthday wishes, and I really appreciate that. Okay, I turned 60 on Friday, and so, I'm pushing like full crotchety right now, so, watch out. I got a free pass. God gives you a free pass when you're 60 to, just be as mean and obnoxious as you possibly can. So, I'm just really, really good with that. Hey, Johnny Vang, thank you. All right. Okay, so let's get back to the topic. Okay, the WHO, the World Health Organization, and the World Economic Forum, the World Economic Forum, I don't know if they've wrapped up their meeting, but there's a lot of information that's actually coming out from these two organizations, specifically about creating mechanisms that are going to help you understand, what your requirements are as, a basic human being, and what you will be doing and what you won't be doing according to these reprobate scumbags. Oh, and which is a reminder, this one is not for kids because there will be some, colorful metaphors, as Leonard Nimoy said in the movie Voyage Home. So I am not going to censor my language in this. So those scumbags in I guess they're meeting in Davos. They really want to piss everybody off. Now, the idea here is this, and I think and if you need more information on this, I didn't link any of this stuff in the description, okay, because those things are like lightning rods, and so, you can go to Tucker Carlson. A lot of this stuff is mirrored by like Benny Johnson or Tim Pool or Stick Sexenhammer, and they actually talk about it. Probably Jones does too, but they have information on this, and you can find out what's going on. One of the things that they really talk about that they're going to crack down on is this concept called malinformation. Look that one up. You'll find that malinformation can be even true information that the WHO and WEF determine is not in the best interest of people knowing. So it might interfere with perhaps not acting in your own best interest, but certainly not acting in the best interest of the WHO or the WEF. As far as I'm concerned, it's probably the most despicable, vile overreach that I could, possibly think of. I mean, it's right out of, the worst tyranny that you could have. You've got a bunch of pointy-headed or bald-headed weirdos who think that they are the trustees for mankind, when quite frankly the way they've been going about things is just rather unimpressive. I mean, if your idea is that you're going to exterminate a significant portion of the population of this earth, and then somehow everything's going to be okay, then you're stupid. Forget that. I mean, I've known a lot of Menzans, and these people from Menza, I don't know, they have this disease where they believe that normal people shouldn't be on this planet. And really, one might argue that having that level of quote-unquote intellect is a danger to themselves and to everybody on this planet. And so I'm not impressed with them. All right. A lot of people, when they encounter the word sovereignty, okay, or sovereignty or sovereign, they don't know what they're talking about. The reason is because those who think they rule have done a really good job of making sure that information that describes those particular qualities in any detail is absent from history, literature, education, even religion. Okay, and they've been at this for a long time. Ever since they were money changers on the temple steps. Ever since Jesus beat them with whips, okay? And for good reason, all right? And so you don't really know what sovereignty is. I learned it over a process of about 7 years. In fact, I wasn't quite sure I was even looking for it until it found me. But sovereignty is simply ordained acknowledgement from the being that runs this place. And there is just one being. It is the supreme authority. Okay? Now, there's a lot of people out there that say, hey, I'm sovereign. Right? Because they've read something in some dusty book there that describes what sovereignty is, and then, of course, they think that by simply announcing that they are sovereign, that is actually what grants them sovereignty. No. Sovereignty is an ordained function, meaning that it's granted by the being that runs the place. It is done through divine connection within yourself. It is done by way of contract / covenant, and both parties, meaning that your egoic projection and the one self within you, that one being that runs everything, they have to have a meeting of the mind, and there has to be an actual notification to ego at your level. What does that mean? Well, it means that self, that singular source, that being that men call God, has to manifest him, herself in your experience in such a way to where her existence is unmistakable, and you can realize it with absolute certainty. Okay. Now, when that sovereignty is granted, you're going to realize that there's a few things that you can't do anymore because it's a violation of that contract. And if you need more information, you can go into the cheat sheet. I explain exactly how that happens. Okay, so these people out here are saying, "Well, I'm sovereign because I've declared it." That's not sovereignty. That's getting ready for butt whipping, because if you don't have that being on your side, and if you don't have, if you're not in a state of atonement, right, at one mind with that being, such that you know that you enjoy divine grace and protection, and such that you can wield, right, through divine right, okay, the kind of responsible powers that being will do through you, not by you, but through you, then you're going to create problems for yourself. And I wouldn't want to be on the wrong side of the WHO or the WEF, because these people are absolute just criminal reprobates. I think they're the absolute worst among us, and so you don't want to be beholden or subject to the absolute stupid nonsense that these people have come up with. And so it is incumbent on you to actually get to a point where you truly understand what sovereignty is and work towards attaining that level of sovereignty. Now, why will the WEF and the WHO both faceplant on this? The reason is because I think since 2005, they don't acknowledge any sovereigns after that point in time. They believe that everybody out in the world is confused to the point where they can't actually be sovereign or act under divine right. And so they're fairly confident that everybody has been disconnected, right? Is confused, right? Not fused, but confused, meaning that they don't have that inner access through like the pineal gland, and they are not actually having a communication, a sufficient two-way communication with with God, with that being that people call God, in order to learn the law sufficiently such that one can actually act and exercise rights. Now, with respect to sovereignty, this is a fairly general presumption made by the legal system and in law in general. It is that most people are irresponsible. And so if you're irresponsible, then you are not capable of, one, entering into a lawful contract, two, you are no longer a competent witness, and three, you are certifiably insane, therefore not responsible, and then then you're relegated to the prevailing authority. And in our case here, it is fictions. Okay, fictions of law, or things that are born out of the theory of legal positivism. Okay, now legal positivism is a theory upon which the legal system is based, whereby man commands the law. Okay, now that's complete BS. Okay, the problem is if you buy into it and if you believe it, then so therefore you're bound. Why? Your word is your bond. That's the law. So if you believe that nonsense, like a judge is, or anybody holds a bar card, or an attorney, then you're subject to that. And I'm afraid that because that is a criminal fraud, then you are specifically disconnected from the most powerful being in the universe, and in fact so disconnected that you lack the capacity to even relate to that being in any kind of meaningful way. And so, of course, yes, as a being like that, in that continual state of criminality, you don't get to know that that being exists. Okay? Now, here's their problem. Okay? There are people like me that know this with absolute certainty. Okay? Absolute certainty. They don't know that. And they have no tool that they can construct within the universe. They have no means of any scientific way of actually verifying the existence of that being. At all. And so, when they say, oh, God does not exist, well, they're telling you the God's honest truth. Why? For them, they have no capacity to know these things. Okay, even the simplest people out there who've had a meaningful salvation experience, they're closer to God than anybody else. They don't stay very close to God for very long because, quite frankly, they bind away their sovereignty. Now, through the salvation experience, that is, asking Jesus to come into your heart because he is an atonement mechanism. That's how that works. Then you can be granted sovereignty, temporarily. The problem is the sovereignty requires a knowledge of the law. And if you don't have that knowledge of the law, then you will deprive yourself of that sovereignty and you will bind it away. And what does that mean? You will bind away. It's just like you have the ultimate power in the universe, but you've chosen to use that ultimate power in the universe to make yourself a slave. And there's nothing in the universe that's going to stop you from making yourself a slave. You have that ultimate power. So most people are in the place now where they are now slaves of their own mind. How do you escape that? Well, now you've got people like me out there that are trying to help you. All right, but really, these things, there is no liberty without that understanding of the law. Why? You have to have that understanding of the law to put the contract in place. When I'm talking contract law, you have to understand why. Because the being that runs the place is using very specific principles in order to maintain and empower that contract. If you don't know the law of contract, then you can't understand how that works. Therefore, you are incompetent, and because of that incompetence, you can't be held to the terms of the contract either way. Although God may love you, he may not stop you from beating your own face with a hammer. These are lessons that you need to learn. They're important, and God's going to let you learn those. All right, and so now, why will the WHO and the WEF faceplant? Well, because there are people like me out there, and there is a growing number of these people. Most of the folks out there have no idea that there are sovereign people that are capable of exercising divine rights walking amongst you right now. There's not a whole lot of them, okay, because it's kind of a challenge. To get to that point, it takes quite a bit of commitment, and so it takes an understanding, and it takes an amount of diligence, and there's a process involved, and I go into that. Now, understand, folks, that the process described in the cheat sheet Mark 5 is only a start. There are follow-on processes that have to work, and not only that. And I do want to talk about some of the things that people need to appreciate. You might ask God for your sovereignty, and it just doesn't happen for you. The reason why is because you have to get to a point of trust. You have to get to a point where you know the law sufficient such that you can apply that law in your immediate situation continually. Now, it's not a lot of law, and if you go to my Discord channel and through the website, Roage.com, and I understand it's not secure, it's all right, God's protecting you, don't sweat it. But I'll at some point I'll see if I can get the certificate transferred. Right now it comes up as unsecure, which in my mind is a hilarious notion, because there is nothing secure about having your port 80 open on your computer. Okay, there's no such thing as internet security. Anybody that tells you that is lying to you. Okay, so you're at the mercy of the universe anyway, and it's strict liability. So that's where you're at. And so if you go to a website, and also there's a donation page there. If you feel like this information is actually helping you, and you want to help me do this, feel free. Hey, like or share, and subscribe to the channel. There's no pressure here. I don't expect anything. I do this for free. Why? Because I consider you me. So why wouldn't I help myself? And so that's the whole idea. So when the WEF begins to start acting against people like me, then that's when they faceplant. Okay, it's sort of like you've got people. It's sort of like what's going on in Ukraine, right? I don't care how powerfully they control the narrative. That narrative control doesn't stop an artillery shell. Okay, and so you see a trial by combat going on right now in Ukraine, and it isn't going very good for the people, the Nazis over there. And I'm sorry, but that's what they call themselves, and so it isn't going well. I don't like people being killed, but you know, the people that this is being blamed on were not the ones that caused this. And so right now it's just terrible what's going on. So the whole idea of divine right, divine grace and protection is that if you act in a right way, then you can enjoy protection, divine protection. That means bring your army. Right? It's like having a 5-mile thick bulletproof vest. Okay? It's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to actually see it happen. And so, have any of you actually faced a U.S. federal district court judge? Right? Ever disobeyed one of those? Anyone? Notice we're having this conversation? Notice I'm not in a federal prison somewhere. So I know a few things. Shoot, in 2010 I walked out of Williamson County court after proving to the judge and my counsel in law, not my attorney, mind you, my counsel in law, that Texas statutes could not be made to apply to me. Now, what's the difference between me and you? Well, I have been granted my sovereignty. It's the only difference. Once you can move yourself to that point, then you really won't be afraid of anything. And this place becomes really fun. It's not going to be fun for a lot of you, but you know, look, a lot of people are afraid. One thing is, you don't need to be afraid of these guys. The WEF and the WHO have already committed sufficient crimes to end them, and every single person who voluntarily works for them has a huge problem. Okay. Now, what we need is more people to be sovereign, to actually understand these principles, so that we don't have to put up with organizations like the WEF and the WHO. Those organizations are wonderful for people that need to be told what to do 24/7. Okay? People that do not know how to exercise a right and do not know how to exercise or behave themselves or comport themselves in a manner that's lawful and responsible. Okay? And so what they're using is they're using fear, and they're using false safety to actually manipulate people into certain behaviors. Okay, so the WEF, the World Economic Forum, and the WHO are basically talking about information pandemics that pose an imminent threat to everybody, and to save you, you're going to have to do what they tell you to do. Not really down with that. I like Texas. I think Greg Abbott really needs to issue a muster call, and I think Texans need to start seriously considering the protection of their border against the federal government of the United States. Now, I'm not talking about overthrowing the government, okay, of the United States. I'm just waiting for it to actually manifest itself, because since 1861, I haven't seen anything that even qualifies under the basic definition of government operating in Washington, D.C. I see a corporation. I see something that's not accountable to God, and so therefore it is not a ruler as defined under the Romans 13. Right? All rulers are chosen by God. Rulers are accountable to God. Corporate fictions are, by their nature, unaccountable. Right? Not responsible. Right? A corporation immunizes the people from direct responsibility and liability. That's not accountability at all. And so a ruler is a man, right? And you know, it's along in the same vein as render unto Caesar what is Caesar. Well, Caesar was a man, right? The federal government of the United States is a concept. Okay, these people who, who are officers of that corporation are not public servants, right? When's the last time these people actually served the American people? They're not public servants. They call themselves public servants. They certainly don't act like public servants, and I could care less what they call themselves. They don't act like public servants, and they're not public servants. They also are not trustees, right? Who's a trustee that you can't trust? Can you rely on anything that Joe Biden says? I mean, even as a Democrat, I mean, honestly, you can't believe anything that guy says. He's not competent, right? And so that, the fact that you have an individual like Joe Biden, or even Mitch McConnell, or reprobates like Chuck Schumer in so-called positions of authority, is proof positive that what you're dealing with isn't lawful constitutional government. Okay, and it's the people that determine that, right? Because if you read your power document, right, the Declaration of Independence, right, governments derive their just power by the consent of the governed. Well, see, here's the problem. Consent is specifically what the World Economic Forum and the World Health Organizations want to deprive you of. They want to say that, you know what? You don't have rights endowed to you by your creator, right? Men determine what your rights are, just like in a communist country, just like in Russia. Well, why? Well, not Russia, but in China. Well, why? Because hey, you have to have demoralized population in order for communism to actually work. What does that mean? Well, if you are actually fused, meaning that you are atoned, you don't have to do what these people tell you to do. Right? They don't have any the power or authority. However, if you are confused, then you don't know. You don't know that the ultimate power resides within you. And so this idea of consent of the governed, right? They want to do things specifically without your consent. Meaning that no, you got to go here. No, you got to go here. You got to do this. You got to do this. And if you don't, then we'll do something to you. Okay? Inject yourself with poison, or we're going to inject you with poison. Because there's some sort of mystical fear out there. I mean, there was a thing called, and I think it was called Red Robot, Blue Robot on YouTube a long time ago. It came out like almost 20 years ago now. And so, it was Red Robot, Blue Robot, and the two robots. There was the pusher robot and the shover robot, and they were there to protect you from the terrible secret of space. And so, the whole idea is they were going to push you down the stairs to save you from the terrible secret of space. I mean, it's a great little metaphor for what's going on here. And so what we've got here is a fight between populists and globalists and corporatists, and that's a big fight going on right now. And the people on the global side have no actual authority. The only authority that they gain is your confusion, your inability to access the most powerful and potent element within your existence. And it is definitely achievable, folks. We talk about these things on Discord. I do have a weekly Discord broadcast that we do at 6 p.m. Central Wednesday on the Sequitur Discord channel. The links are on my in my web page. You do have to be made a member, and your membership is contingent on you reading the cheat sheet Mark 5 out loud to yourself. Now, again, you won't understand why it's important until you actually read the thing. It may be one of the more difficult things that you do. Why? Well, because you already know what's in the cheat sheet, and ego, right, the flesh suit that you're wearing, will act to try to sabotage that activity. And people think I kid about that, but it's amazing the extent that ego will do to actually try to maintain the illusion that he controls things here on this planet. All right, so Bear in mind, you've got people at the WEF and WHO that are going to attempt to deprive people of something that is theirs by their inherent nature, and so let's remedy our confusion. Let's learn the law sufficient to where we can act rightly, and we can enjoy that power and protection, so that we don't have to put up with these bonehead screwballs just making a mess of everything. And so, let's do this together, and so nobody has to get hurt here. Okay? No, there's no violence required here at all. None whatsoever. Unfortunately, a lot of the folks out there that are very popular, they don't realize that they're operating from what I call a weaponized model of reality. It is a model of reality where you see nothing but your own enslavement, and you see no pathway out of it. Okay? None. Why? Well, because the base premises that they gave you, right? Actually, it was your parents. Right? All they could do is teach you how to be a slave like them. Why? So what do? They put the first hooks. Then after those hooks, those hypnotic hooks were put in as a child, then, here comes school, here comes education, here comes even religion, history, literature, all of these things then worked to actually exploit that and put more and more conditioning to where by the time you graduate college, you become triggered. And wokeness and this whole idea of triggering is sort of like the movie Telephone with Charles Bronson, where all of a sudden you might see something on TV that actually triggers your subconscious programming. At which point then, of course, people start behaving in ways that don't make very much sense to anybody else. But they don't realize just how absurd, their behavior actually is. So my idea here is, hey, let's really need to stop these organizations because they're committing what I call adultery. The WHO is actually modifying organisms on this planet, and that's technically adultery, and you don't do that. And so these people aren't very smart, so all they can really do is make a mess of things. And as far as the World Economic Forum, the only reason they have power is people still believe that worthless garbage stuff they called money or legal tender actually has value, when really it doesn't at all. But soon we're all going to understand exactly how worthless that is, and I hope that we're smart enough not to go back to these same reprobates and expect them to be the solution to the problem that they themselves created. And so, hopefully we can get past that. But one thing I want to do is, hey, no reason for fear here, folks. Just relax, right? It is a show. The sooner you start really figuring out who you are and what you're capable of, then the better off we're going to be. But don't worry. Look, these flesh suits. They're disposable. Don't worry. It's just a show. You'll laugh. It is a practical joke that you're playing on yourself. It's not nearly as serious as people make it out to be. Yes, there's pain. Yes, that's right. It's ugly. But, however, we're all in this together. And together we can actually solve this whole problem. All right, so I want to go to some of the chats here and see what we got going on here. Yes, Johnny Vang, he's right. In a sense, the Matrix is a great allegory. Exactly. But what they didn't talk about in the Matrix is the architect does a little bit, right? Because what he does there, he talks about the mechanism of consent. Right? What do you see? He says they're granted a choice, albeit it may be a subconscious choice, but it's still a choice. The choice is still there. You're powerless because you've voluntarily chosen to be. That's what's operating here. So in that sense, yes, the Matrix is a good allegory. However, you don't wake up in a bunch of goo. You just wake up. However, you do realize that this sort of presentation is the simulation that you're in is rather cheesy. And so GameCuber says, it's Santa. Yeah, probably. Hopefully, hopefully it doesn't scare people off. Give me some time. Who knows? I may get wider and wider. So, let's see. All right. And so, let's see. David Andrews says, I went up against state court after reading the Cheat Sheet 5 and walked away unscathed. Yeah, that happens a lot. And if you're not walking unscathed away from a legal fiction, then man, you need some help. There's no reason to be subject to that criminal activity. Okay. Red Robot, Blue Robot is similar as the WEF and the Heritage Foundation Project 25. Yeah. What do they call those? False Hegelian dialectics? Yeah. Well, I mean, there's been a new term. Okay, now Mark Dice has actually come up, or at least started making this popular, and I really like it. And he calls them paleoconservatives. Okay, paleoconservatives, and these are conservatives that are not neocons. Right? They are not neoconservatives. That means neoconservatives are warmongers and they're globalists. Okay, and it was William F. Buckley Jr. And Rush Limbaugh, which for the most part were spearheading that effort. The people on the other side, like the John Birch Society and a few others, they were the ones who were the neoconservatives, and they pretty much got punked. Okay, so now what we're having is people here in America are rediscovering paleoconservatism, and we're finding out it's like very popular, and it's gaining a lot of additional power, and so let's see what happens. But I think a lot of folks are paleoconservatives. They don't like globalism. Globalism is not very useful to people. Certainly not to me. And so once people start realizing that globalism doesn't work, and the reason why is unless your country has protections against other economies, then you're going to be in competition with somebody that doesn't have the same overhead that you do. Okay? And so if countries and nations do not individually or locally protect even the United States, from state to state, there should be an amount of economy protection to ensure that you, who have a $300,000 mortgage and all the overhead of an automobile, insurance, and all, medical, don't have to compete with somebody who is living in a shack, has absolutely no bills or overhead at all. That's not fair. That's not fair. And so both those people need to be protected. For the most part, for not being underpaid for their time and labor, and as a consequence, in the United States, we need protection here, with respect to our goods that we produce, if there is any, and some of the other economic things that we need protections from to keep that competition from being completely unfair, and thus destroying economies in both of in all of the nations, like what we're seeing right now. And so is there Scream Engine? Many people are hitting that transcend button these days. It works. Yeah, no, I was a long time ago. Yeah. Yep. So, but I don't know. I don't know if there's a whole lot of people waking up. I've been on Twitter or X for quite some time, and I've actually come to the realization that what, I don't know if there's a whole lot of fish left in that pond. Now that may change depending on how much more additional suffering is applied to the population worldwide. Maybe the wars, maybe the pestilence, maybe the famine, and what else? There's another horseman too. War, famine, pestilence. I can't remember. There's one more. But yeah, the four horsemen, and they get applied, and then people start figuring out. Well, why? Because they really don't have much choice. We, or the I, are waking ourselves up, and that's what's happening. I mean, this is what consciousness was doing, and so yeah, in a sense, the architect mentions contract and consent. Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Sure does. Sure does. Now, I have you know that before I switched on in 2006, yeah, I was familiar with the Matrix, and everything that the architect was saying originally to me just sounded like gobbledygook. I didn't understand it. It wasn't until after I switched on, transcended, to where that actually started making sense. It's a very specific population. Of course, again, a lot of the information there is occluded. A lot of the useful information is occluded. And that's true also for Scripture. Yeah, those elements are in there. But look, specifically, the Church has been responsible. Specifically, the Holy Roman Church has been really leading the way in information suppression to make sure that people just don't figure this out. Last thing that these scumbags want is a bunch of free people walking around that are not subject to their stupid nonsense. And so you're not going to get that information. That's what led to the suppression of the Gospel of Judas. That's why you have certain certain Gospels that were actually canonized. And that's why there's this huge pressure to actually come up with, new handy-dandy, improved versions of Scripture. And I'm not saying that the authorized version of, the King James it was the end-all. The problem was when the powers that be took the margin notes out of the Geneva Bible and then decided to codify the King James. That was a huge loss of biblical interpretation, and a lot of it was lawful in that it was established by precedence, and so when King James, an absolute reprobate, mind you, not a Christian by any means or any definition. Or no one that does not follow Jesus' teachings in any way whatsoever, if you don't like that whole Christ thing. But when he rewrote it, he got rid of a lot of very potent concepts. You can get to those concepts. Well, why? Because you can actually just talk to the guy, the being himself. You don't have to rely on Scripture. You can get this information directly. Through your, through anything else. I mean, if you're connected correctly, you can get all the information you need out of a dictionary or an encyclopedia, out of just looking at an ant pile. Okay, I mean, you will know things that you've never thought of, and so, what the biggest mistake that on their side, right, with respect to them on their side, because why? They wanted to maintain divine control, meaning that the kings have power over most people, and they did that by ignorance and making sure that most people were illiterate and incapable of understanding that. Okay, so then King James strips all the information out of the Geneva Bible. They come up with the King James version, but the mistake they made is they left the original interpretation, right, of Romans 13, and render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. That is a huge problem for them. They've remedied that with some of the follow-on interpretations. Like, hey, if you want to exercise, an interesting little exercise, get yourself a legal dictionary, right? And then what you do is you open up Romans 13 in an authorized King James version. Then you open up a New International Version side by side, and then you look up in the legal dictionary all the changes to the terms between the two versions of the Bible. That will blow your mind. Okay, now the requirement that you have to pay revenue. All right, now I'm paraphrasing some of the elements in the New International Version, which says that you're subject to specific income tax, right, and revenue taxes. Okay, now understand something. These concepts, the Romans had no idea of these concepts. Okay, revenue, really? No, they weren't thinking in those terms. They were dealing in gold. Okay, they were dealing in lawful money at the time. They didn't have these concepts of fictional money, right? That is a more recent invention, and to sit there and apply these modern terms to these real lawful elements is an absolute travesty. I mean, it's absolute crime. Right? There was no revenue in Rome. Okay? I mean, and as far as income tax, okay, there was no income tax. I mean, these guys, I think for the most part, they were paying like 4% of their time and labor to taxes to the Roman Empire. Right? Hey, and they didn't like it. Okay, and shoot. I don't know. I mean, raise your hand if you've paid an effective 72% tax rate here in this so-called United States of America. Yeah, 36 twice is what I paid in 2004, 2002, 2003. And that's why I don't do that anymore. Why? Because I know what income is. That's one of the benefits of actually having a constructive relationship with the being that runs the place. You understand how other people are just totally bullshitting you, and then you realize that none of these contracts are actually enforceable, and then you don't really have to worry about it at all. Okay, and Scream mentions many people hitting that transcend button. Okay, he says Red Rob, yeah, similar. Okay. In a sense, the architect mentions contract and consent. Yes, he does. Absolutely. Right? The idea was this, that everybody that was in the power plant had consented to be there. Why? Because the choice was given to them. This is true for people here. They just don't know how that choice is actually, and when that choice is made. Largely, that choice is made when you learn how to speak as a kid. And it's all downhill from there. Now, remember in Scripture it says, "Hey, to enter the kingdom of God or go before God, you have to enter as children." I'm paraphrasing there, right? But that's the whole idea. You have to go as children. Well, why? Children are not bound to contracts that deprive them of sovereignty. Okay, so they're not responsible. Okay, they're not responsible. They're not witnesses in a court of law. Why? Because they're not responsible until the age of what? Consent. It is the age of consent. What does that mean? That means at certain times they're smart enough to know the law, apply the law, at which point when they reach the age of consent, they are now responsible for their own existence. And with that responsibility come rights. Right? They always say, well, with rights come responsibility. Well, why? Because they don't want to tell you that the opposite is even more true. With responsibility come rights. Why? Because they want people to comport themselves in a way that is irresponsible, so that they cannot exercise a right. Again, here it is a consent. You choose not to act responsibly. You're choosing not to enjoy rights, not to be able to exercise rights. All right, so 501c3, the latest subversion. The whole corporation was invented in 45. And I don't mean 1945, I don't mean 1845, I mean 45. And the idea of creating a fictional construct to immunize yourself from any kind of criminal liability it was an incredibly dangerous concept, because it deprives you of accountability and deprives you of responsibility. Without responsibility, again, you don't have any lawful power. You don't have the power and authority to exercise rights. Therefore, you don't have the power or authority to actually protect yourself. You're subject to the prevailing authorities. And these prevailing authorities are just absolute criminal reprobates. I'm sorry. There's no other way of describing them. The NIV is a great example of obfuscation and revision, if thine eye be single versus if your eyes are good. Yeah, okay, exactly, Scream Engine. Johnny Vang, churches have been subverted for a long time. Many passages of Scripture, and even the inclusion of some writings and the exclusion of others, was calculated to max influence and minimum culpability. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. This was something that the evil men realized a long time ago, that one, the power of contract is absolute. Okay, they know that. Okay, and so what they do is they will modify language and change the definition of the language ex post facto. Okay, so they make contract. Let's say, for instance, they have a contract with the American people, and so what do? Oh, well, they subverted it by redefining terms, specifically the term called person. Right? Person in law is not flesh and blood. It's an individual. And I don't mean an individual flesh and blood man. I mean an individual corporation subject to its jurisdiction. Right? No man is subject to a jurisdiction of a fictional corporate entity that we call a state, which is a subsidiary corporate entity to the United States. Okay, it's a subsidiary. Okay, and so no one is subject to this corporate fiction. And so what they did was they created an entity that was subject to this, and didn't bother to tell you that you've placed yourself within that office. Okay, when you say, "Hey, I'm a person," they don't mean, "Hey, are you a flesh and blood person?" You say, "No, you're saying, are you a person or an entity of interstate and international commerce, a person subject to that jurisdiction?" And where it comes from is you can look at the 14th Amendment and see how they fooled you. Okay, at the top it says all persons. Right, all persons who are citizens of the several states are citizens of the United States and subject to its jurisdiction. What is that saying? Okay, well, there were no Union states after the Civil War, right? After March 27th, 1861. They were federal states. Federal states are subsidiaries of the main corporation created in 1871. They're subsidiary corporations. Okay, and so before, when we were in the realm of public law, people's rights were protected because their union states were sovereign countries unto themselves, and through their constitutions of the several states, their rights were protected under citizenship of that sovereign country. Well, in 1861, that went away. Why? The people decided to rescind the Constitution. Well, guess what? They couldn't reestablish. Rights, and so they are consent, and so they created a corporation. Then they created an entity subject to that corporation, and so they're telling you, okay, if you claim to be a citizen of one of the several states, which are federal states, subsidiary corporations of the main corporation, if you say, "Hey, I'm a citizen of Colorado or Texas," right? The state of Texas, all capital letters. That's a corporate subsidiary of the United States of America. Of course, if you're swearing fealty and calling yourself subject or a citizen, right, under contract with a fiction or a fiction of law, right, that is a subsidiary, of course. Why? If you're a citizen of a federal state, then you're a citizen of the United States and subject to its jurisdiction. Why? Your word is your bond. You've just voluntarily made yourself subject to a fiction of law, which is technically a crime. You're committing a criminal fraud. Therefore, if you read the 13th Amendment, you find out the only ways that you can be deprived of your rights is through due process, being convicted of a crime. Well, guess what? If you confess by your own mouth, folks, if you confess by your own mouth, you've been given due process of law. So therefore, because you confess by your own law, "Hey, I'm the Easter Bunny," or "I am a U.S. citizen," or I'm a citizen of Texas, then you voluntarily committed a crime and confessed that crime. Right? Your word is your bond. And so therefore, hey, if you read the 13th Amendment, it says, hey, the only way you can lose your rights is if, through due process, you're convicted of a crime. Just simply saying, I'm a U.S. citizen is a crime. Now, do they go out there and advertise that? No. They don't advertise that at all. They don't tell you that. They don't educate you that. It's just people can't figure out, hey, wait a minute, how come I don't have any rights? How come when I say stuff, nobody respects my rights? I got no freedom here. I mean, I get no, I can't exercise any rights. Well, because the base presumption is you voluntarily waived them. And it's a pretty good presumption. Why? Because we are absolutely, monumentally ignorant of the law. Now, we can bounce around like a pinball here, luck, chance, accident, chaos, or we could find out how things work here, and then, wow, this becomes a very interesting documentary, and everything seems to work out just fine. Pain, suffering, death, not required. Hey, your results may vary. I suggest that there's a better way of doing this. And so let's do that, or at least try that. I don't know if we've actually really tried it. All right, so let's see here. Okay, obfuscation, revision. Churches have been subverted for a long time. Okay, I've read that one. All right. So, hey, folks, we are coming up on an hour, and so I'd like to actually end the stream. Are there any other questions? Put them in the chat. I'll wait here for a little bit. Anyone? All right. All right. So, all right, folks. Hopefully, this has been useful to us. I think what I'd like to really do is, maybe schedule this on a weekend and do it in a more regular way. I don't want to do it every day like I used to, but probably on the weekend, maybe on an afternoon, and then folks, you could bring your questions, and we can have this out, or I'll talk to against a specific topic, and then we could do that. All right, can you guys hopefully let's see here, can you guys still see me or hear me? I see some stuff. All right, so hands covered in chicken. Chicken cooking. Yeah, okay, well, hey, good enough. All right, folks, if you have any questions, look, just go to my website. You can contact me through there. You can find my X or Twitter handle out there. You can find all that information, or you can ping me or leave a comment on this video. Don't matter. I'll find you eventually. And so I do appreciate you folks, and I want to thank you for coming and spending some time and bearing with me, because hey, I'm not real good at this. And so, I try to do this in a natural way so that I'm a human being, and not one of these really spiffy programmed robotic people. That I'm actually just a regular guy. I suppose if I had a production facility that of course I'd have to step up my game. I wouldn't be able to just sit here in suspenders and wave my hands and stuff. I'd have to sit there and not be human, I suppose. So, all right, you guys, you and ladies, you have a wonderful day. All right, have a great day. Thank you, folks. All right, so gonna bag the stream, so you be good. All right, we'll talk to you soon.